On behalf of the Wolk family, I want to thank you for being here today. They truly appreciate your support. Following the conclusion of our service here in the sanctuary, we will exit and make our way to Shalom Gardens, and directions for that are found in the back on the table outside. But the Shalom Gardens is found in the back of the corner of Los Gatos Memorial Park. And there will be a Shiva Minyan this evening at 7:30 p.m. at the Forum. That address is 23,500 Cristo Rey Drive, Cupertino. You can get there off of Foothill Expressway. And you will look for Unit 509F. That is Eileen's apartment. Death has taken our beloved Ron. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, and be with them. For Ron's love that united us in life and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. In this time of grief, we listen to the voice of our sacred scriptures that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. It tells us of our kinship with the Creator, in light as in darkness, in joy as in sorrow, in life as in death. Adonai roi, lo exar, bineo deshe, yar bitseni, Almei minuchot yenahaleni, nafshi shovev, yancheni v'maglet tzedek, leman shemo. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Gam kilech beget salmavet lo hirara ki ata imadi shiftecha mishantecha hema yinachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged zorerai dishanta v'shemen roshi kosi revaya ach tov v'chesed yirtifuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti bevet Adonai leorech yamim. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, lead me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Remember me. To the living I am gone, to the sorrowful I will never return. To the angry I was cheated, but to the happy I am at peace, and to the faithful I have never left. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful sea, remember me. As you look in awe at a mighty forest and its grand majesty, remember me. As you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts, your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. For if you always think of me, I will never be gone. When a person is born, we all celebrate. And when a person dies, everyone cries. But it shouldn't be this way. Rather, when a person is born, it's not appropriate to celebrate for him because no one knows what his portion will be and on what deeds he shall stand, whether he will be righteous or wicked, good or evil. But when he dies, we should indeed rejoice, for he has passed away with a good name and left the world in peace. It is like a parable of two ships near a harbor. One was going out to sea, and the other was coming in from its voyages. Everyone around the harbor was celebrating for the one setting out, while no one celebrated the ship coming in. Someone came up and said, "These actions are backwards. We shouldn't celebrate the ship that first starting out on its journey, because none of us knows what it shall encounter out there. How long will it last, and what storms will it face? Likewise, we should celebrate for the one that's returning home, because it enters in peace. So it is when a person dies, better to rejoice and celebrate, for he has passed away with a good name in peace from the world." Words from Theodore Roosevelt. It is not the critic that counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself for a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at its worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat. Each person has a name. We each have a name given by God and given by our father and mother. We each have a name given by our stature and smile and given by our attire. We each have a name given by the hills and given by the walls. We each have a name given by the stars and given by our friends. We each have a name given by our sins and given by our yearnings. We each have a name given by our enemies and given by love. We each have a name given by celebrations and given by our work. We each have a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. We each have a name given by the sea and given by our death. Eileen. Dearest Shekhinah, who resides on the highest of heights, I beseech of you, preserve your marriage as a peaceful memory. Restore your year to life to ongoing healing, healing of the soul and the body. bring you out from the days of your marriage into the days of your widowhood with grace and compassion. Adonai, our God, who heals the brokenhearted and restores their bodies, bring consolation to the bereaved within their homes and their hearts. A reading from Rabbi Harold Schulweis. When dying is over, a different kind of memory takes over. Not the memory that is obituary, not the memory that records the past indiscriminately, but an active memory that sifts through the ashes of the past to retrieve isolated moments and that give heart to the future. That memory is an act of resurrection. It raises up from the oblivious the glories of forgotten years, even the memories of failure, the recollections of frustration and regret are precious. Broken memories are like the tablets that Moses shattered, placed lovingly in the holy ark of remembrance. Memories are saved, those immaterial, disembodied ghosts that endure. What is life after death? Pointers, ensigns, marking places that raise us up to life and give us a changed heart. Perhaps a life lived differently, better, wiser, stronger than before. What is life after death? The life of the survivor. And a reading from Rabbi Alvin Fine. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith. From defeat to defeat to defeat until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage, from birth to death to life everlasting. In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. In ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai natan, you have given. You gave us a loved one, Ron, who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in Ron's life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach. Blessed be the name of God, now and forever. The Torah portion Tzav, which we read this Shabbat, describes in detail many of the sacrifices that the priests are to do on behalf of the Israelites. The installation of the priests also occurs in this portion. One of the important things that we learn from Tzav is about the humility of the priests. Humility is having confidence in ourselves along with the awareness that any abilities we have are gifts, and those gifts come with responsibilities. For as long as I have known Ron, which has been over 20 years, he exuded humility. He brought his wisdom and a calm presence to anything that he was involved in. Ron Wolk was born in Brooklyn in 1937. His brother passed away about 20 years ago, and his sister, whose words I will read in a few minutes, is unable to be here because of health. Growing up, Ron's family belonged to an Orthodox community. He attended cheder, or school, and lived a very structured life. His mother died in 1986, and his father, who lived to the age of 95, died of Alzheimer's in 1998. Ron met Eileen at age 16 when they were in high school. They married at the end of their senior year of college and moved in with Eileen's parents. Ron attended the Brooklyn Polytech, which is now a part of NYU Polytechnic School of Engineering, studying chemical engineering. Following his undergrad, he went on to get his master's. It was during his master's studies that Eileen and Ron had Brad, and 18 months later, along came Stephen. Jeff came along a few years after that. As the boys were growing up, Ron left the disciplining and punishing to Eileen. Following his graduation, Ron got a job in New Jersey working for hydrocarbon research, which was working on coal gasification. In other words, turning coal into gasoline. The problem was that once made, it cost about $1 a gallon. But regular gasoline at the time was only 25 cents. Wish that was today, right? In 1974, Ron took a job with Electric Power Research here in the San Jose area. Part of the draw in moving to California was the college system for the boys. All three sons were able to go to UCs. At EPR, Ron was supervising research related to electric power. For his job, he was able to travel all over the world. And of course, Eileen went along for the ride. They were able to go to Australia 4 times, which, as I understand, was such a hardship for Eileen because she loved to scuba dive. They traveled to Japan, to Germany, England, and Denmark, just to name a few more. In 1994, after 20 years with EPR, Ron began his own consulting business with the acronym WITS, standing for Wolk Integrated Technical Services. They even had hats that said WITS on it. Ron was much happier as he had been, as now he was his own boss, and he was in charge. Jeff said that his dad would also say, "No one likes to be told what to do." As the owner of his company, he could make the rules. One of the things that Ron taught Eileen was when he was president of junior baseball. Someone came to Ron with an idea, and Ron told the man, "Why don't you start a committee to get it done?" This usually ended that idea. Ron and Eileen joined Shir Hadash in 1998. Both Ron and Eileen attended services often, and they were both a part of 2 Chavurot. Chavurot are small groups to help people connect with other members of the synagogue in smaller settings, and sometimes are more social than religious. I believe where many of us got to know Ron was from his involvement in the men's club. He joined the men's club and liked going on their hikes, and he really enjoyed the camaraderie. He held several positions on the men's club board, including president from 2005 to 2007. By holding the position of men's club president, Ron also had a seat on the congregational board of directors. I remember being in meetings with Ron. He always asked good questions and gave very thoughtful answers. He wanted to make sure that things were running well and that the money coming into the temple was spent the right way. At one time, we had an active Arab-Jewish dialogue, and Ron was a part of those discussions. He had friends on both sides of the table. He and Eileen also participated in our grandparents' circle, which was for interfaith grandparents. Ron was a source of inspiration to some of the younger couples in the group. Family was very important to Ron, and he was extremely proud of all his children and his grandchildren and great-grandchild. He did all of the things that he did so that he could take care of his family, and he did well by them. In 2018, our men's club awarded Ron their Man of the Year award. The Man of the Year is someone who embodies the spirit of volunteerism and contributes to the vitality of the congregation and community. Whether it was organizing our Mother's Day concerts or serving bagels on the first day of religious school or serving lunch on Purim, and many other things, Ron was always there to help out. Ron and Eileen moved to the Forum in 2018, right after they celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary. She had started seeing some of the Parkinson's symptoms in Ron beginning in 2016. The Forum was a place that both of them agreed would work for them. And in 2020, Ron was officially diagnosed with Parkinson's. Just this past December, Ron, Eileen, and I enjoyed some time together sitting outside having some wonderful conversation. Ron was still walking with his walker and he was eating in the dining room. But by January, his health really began to decline and hospice was recommended. He died peacefully this past Saturday. Rabbi Aaron said that Ron's calm presence, his belief that things could be worked out, and his kindness will be missed. I couldn't agree more. He was, as Eileen said, one of the kindest and gentlest human beings. To Eileen, Brad, Lori, Ben, PJ and Zach, Laura and their great-grandchild Davi, to Stephen, Kitty, and Leslie, and to Jeff, Ruth Ann, Hannah, Jesse, Kieran, and Aiden, and to their nephew, Andrew Gendler, we offer you all our deepest condolences. Zichrona livracha, may Ron's memory be for a blessing. And here are some words from Ron's sister. The earliest memories of my brother Ron were of a student and sports fan. He was often excused from chores because he had to study. He also listened and watched the Knicks and Rangers at the same time with the TV and the radio. He played basketball while in high school. He was also experimental. He once put ice cubes on the window to cool our hot bedroom. He instilled all his good traits in his children and grandchildren. He left Brooklyn for New Jersey and then to California. We were separated by miles, but always kept in touch. We traveled from coast to coast for all the family mitzvahs. Who can forget the 40, 60, 50, 70, 60, 80 birthday anniversary parties? I will miss him the rest of my days. And that's from his sister, Cynthia Gilman. And now we're going to hear from Ron's three sons, Brad, Stephen, and Jeff, followed by his granddaughter, Hannah, and his grandson, Zach, Ben, and Aiden.
My father had a long, productive, and wonderful life. As I think back, I realized he was very good at many important things. These things have impacted me personally and professionally throughout my life. He was an excellent family man. As a husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, brother. He took the time and energy to stay involved with everyone. Some of the things that I remember that we've adopted ourselves is making sure we have dinner together as a family, making sure we take family vacations. In one case, to show you what kind of person he was, I was backpacking and had some car trouble way up in the mountains. He and my mom drove to the auto parts store, got the parts, drove up to Angels Camp, which is 3 hours, picked me up, and drove me home. You could always count on my parents. He was a world-class engineer. He had over 50 patents. He had high-level expertise in the energy field. He started his own consulting business, and I kind of followed suit, following from my work in the biotech field into my own consulting business. I remember sitting in his office at HRI as a young kid, seeing the kind of work that he did and helped inspire me to be an engineer. And we have quite a few engineers in the family, quite a few beards in the family too. He was an active volunteer. He was president of the Little League. He was president of the swim club. He was president of the men's club. He did all kinds of things to stay involved with the community. He was a skilled investor. He understood the value of savings and taught that to all of us. He made thoughtful investments and helped take care of everybody in the family. And he was a world traveler. It's important to go around the world to see things so you understand the world, and my dad understood that very well. Overall, he was a good man. He taught me a lot. He had a great long life. I'm proud to be his son. I miss you.
So I'm Steve, the second son, for those of you that don't know me. And as the Kenner pointed out, I think it's better that we celebrate his life rather than mourn his death. So I want to tell you some of the things I learned from my father. And I'll start off kind of serious and then hopefully get you to smile a little bit. Number one is the importance of honor and integrity. You do what you say you're going to do, and if for some reason you can't, you make good. In the end, the word is all your word is all you really leave with. And my father was a honest guy to a fault. He used to say, you don't take $1 million, you don't take $1. It's the same. I also learned the importance of responsibility, I think, as Brad and the cantor alluded. Dad was always involved, always contributing to his community, Little League coach, local government, participating in the temple. Those are all things he believed in. And if you didn't like how things were being done, he stood up and did it a better way. It was funny, even as he was losing his cognitive ability, he was always very concerned about what his responsibilities were. And unlike so many people these days, he was much more concerned with his responsibilities than his rights. And he taught me that people are capable of solving their own problems, and sometimes the best way to do it is to let them figure them out themselves. Taught me the importance of meaningful work. If you do something you love, it's not work. And his work as an engineer and scientist were very important to him. Doing a great job was very important to him, even if that meant he had to face the wrath of Eileen when he got home late for dinner from work. And I assure you that wrath was not small. And yeah, sometimes he took it to a extreme. I think a lot of you are old enough to remember when we had to tune the television, the horizontal and the vertical, and my dad had to spend time tuning that television to the point that no one could watch the show because he was tuning, had to have the television tuned just right. He taught me the importance of fundamental understanding to the point that if I asked him for help with my homework, he would take my book and study it until he understood it, even if that meant I wasn't getting my homework done. And those of you that know my dad or know me know that if his way of thinking was different than someone else's, he usually believed his was better. And he taught me the importance of financial responsibility. Yeah, always provide for your children with a roof over their heads, clothes on their back, food in their belly, and an education. For their latest harebrained scheme, on the other hand, well, that was on them. Yeah, something my dad did when it was time for me to go to college. He told me he'd been saving money since I was a baby for college. If I went to college, that money was for me, and I could keep what was left. And if I didn't go to college, it was all his. Thought that was a fair deal, and I carried that tradition. So the realities of time and time management. On a family trip or anywhere we were going as a family, if someone asked how long it took to get there, the answer was 40 minutes. Didn't matter if it was 5 minutes or 4 hours, it was 40 minutes. Yeah, the other place time became very important was it was measured by the game clock, watching a game. If there was 5 minutes left in the game, it meant the game would be over in 5 minutes, even if that was 30 minutes in a basketball game, and my mother was getting upset because she wanted to have dinner. But you could use that time management system, and he used that quite well. For exercise and sports, didn't happen to agree on this one, but my dad obviously felt that exercise was never enjoyable, and it was much better to watch someone who was paid to do it. And my dad taught me the loyalty to really bad sports teams. Being a Giants and a Knicks fan for decades and decades, but I also learned it was an opportunity to advise these coaches who, for some reason, really weren't listening. And then my dad taught me a few things that were not inherently important or valuable. One was feelings, sharing them, or having to listen to someone else share them. In particular, whining. And that led to my personal parenting style of having a no whining zone in the house, and I believe that was one of the best parenting moves I ever made. And yeah, another thing that my dad obviously didn't think was too important was talking a lot, not his strong suit. In fact, awkward silences on a telephone call were just a natural part of the telephone call and not a problem. And reminds me of a quote from a movie, Best in Show, where I felt like with my dad we could sit for hours and not run out of things to not talk about. And with that, I'll stop talking and pass it to Jeff. Thank you.
So, by the way, I sort of have the reputation of the one who cries a lot in the family. So, anyway, we'll try to make it through. But, so I think my brothers have talked about what a brilliant guy my dad was, and that's very true. But also, it was not what was the most important thing to me. What I remember is just how supportive he was, even if he thought what I was doing was not really the best thing to do. But even as a kid, charitably, I was an ungifted athlete, I think you could say. And that meant he was at every basketball, baseball, and soccer game to really watch me not play. So that's love and support. And, as I got a little older, Steve said he didn't usually say too many words, which is true. But you could look in his eyes, because his eyes told you, what he was thinking. So when it was time for me to go to college, and I said, Dad, I think I'm going to study physics, and I might even want to do something like astronomy. His eyes told me, you idiot, what are you thinking? You could be an engineer, right? Why are you even thinking of doing this? And I knew that's what he was thinking. But, all he said to me was, oh, okay, where do you think you want to go? you know? He didn't care. And when my brothers had dated women for years, and I dated someone for a few months, and they'd only met her a few times, my wife Ruth Ann over there. And after a few months, I came to their house and said, "Oh, we're engaged." I could look at my dad's eyes, and he was thinking, "My God, you haven't even dated much. What the hell are you thinking?" But all he said was, "Congratulations. Very happy for you," you know? But, you know, now, you know, whether he was being really supportive or what the cantor said was a little, you know, was right, but it's a Wolk, we call it a Wolk man rule, right? One of the rules is we don't like to be told what to do. So maybe he was being supportive, and maybe he just realized he had given me that lesson really well, and I was going to do what I wanted to do anyway. I don't know. Just the other thing that really stays with me is just what a kind, loving father he was. Most of you were not around for my brother Steve's teenage years, but if you were, you would know that my father did not suggest disowning Steve at any point, and that was love. That was a deep, deep, abiding love, and you know, the love always for his kids and his grandkids, and you know, even his love for my mom was a fierce love. And even towards the end, when he could not communicate very well, I had brought his wedding photo album, and he took it and he paged through it very slowly, looking at every page, and then before I left, he got it so he could look at it again. And when they were together, their love was so strong and clear. And that was the model for me, and you know, my wife of 35 years now. And you know, he was even sweet in ways you wouldn't expect. He was not an animal person, really not an animal person, but he had a very soft spot for my dog, and she passed away a couple years ago. And I think the way I think of my dad the last couple of days is sneaking my dog pretzels. And I think my dog is very happy right now because my dad's sneaking her pretzels again, and she's excited about that. You know, the last thing I just want to say is my dad is always with me, and it's the best part of me, and I hope he stays with you too, because I think that makes the world a better place.
All right, so I am Hannah, and I am the three out of six grandchild. So everyone here knows that my grandpa was a good man. He was strong in his values, stoic in nature, and committed to his family always. What everyone may not know was that he also gave really great, though maybe unsolicited, advice. So I'd like to share some of the wisdom that he's imparted to me over the years. All right. So when I was little, it was a lot of stop worrying. Maybe not what an overly anxious child wanted to hear, but he was right. He always emphasized how grateful we should be for the kind of lives we had, and saw the potential in all of us grandkids, even the ones who worried too much. When I was a bit older and feeling insecure in my first relationship, I remember saying, it's hard to meet a life partner, and I didn't know if I could find someone else. Without a pause, he confidently scoffed, "You'll find someone else." I was probably worrying too much because, again, I was right, and shortly after that relationship ended, I met my husband. After my husband and I got engaged, we went to see my grandma and grandpa so I could show them the ring I was so excited about. We had some great conversation about when my grandparents had just started dating, and he would take the bus to go see Eileen and some of their travels. Interestingly, I took this opportunity to ask for advice. Maybe it's my anxious mind, but I asked them how they were coping with death as they got older and lost family and friends on a more frequent basis. And Grandpa told me, "You still have to take out the trash the next day." So that's a quote I still carry with me today, because that was just him, always resilient with that touch of humor. My brother Kieran and I went to visit him in December. He wasn't doing so well at that time, and I was nervous he wouldn't know who we were or be able to speak to us. Showing his resiliency yet again, he got himself up, knew who we were, and asked about our lives like he always did. He then had another piece of advice, which was, "Be grateful for all of your blessings." I saw him one more time after that, and by that time, he wasn't able to give any more pieces of advice. He left me with a pretty good one, though, so I can't complain. He did still have his humor at that time, though, because I made some sort of, God, now I'm forgetting. Oh, I told him that he still had a pretty good head of hair, which he did. I mean, my grandpa always had, like, a lot of hair, right? So I told him, like, "You still have that, like, that's great." And he goes, "Where else would it go?" And I also may have made a joke about one of my brother's lack of facial hair, because, the Wolks have beards, and one of my brothers doesn't really have one. And again, he wasn't really super responsive at that time, but that made him smile. So thanks, Aiden, for that. Anyways, I'm so grateful to have had a grandfather who cared so deeply about all of us, and I'll miss him.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Wolk, and Ron was my grandpa. My grandpa was smart, reserved, and steadfast. He was always there at life events, big and small, with my grandma, from soccer games to birthdays and graduations. He would always check in about school or my job. Sometimes it felt like a quiz that I was nervous to pass, but he was asking because he cared and he wanted me to be successful. I remember outings with my grandpa, from going stock car racing, visiting the Tech Museum, eating at Tony Roma's, attending Sharks games, and the most memorable for me was a single-A San Jose Giants baseball game. I'll never forget that game because of how much my brother, my grandpa, and I enjoyed the gimmicks they had to keep the crowd entertained. We enjoyed watching a remote-controlled race car race around the warning track, a competition to see who could break the first headlight of an old ice cream truck with a stale bagel, and the beer batter, which was a player on the opposing team who, if they struck out, all the beers were half price for the rest of the inning. So whenever there was 2 strikes on that person, we could see all the crowd creep down to the edge of their seats in the stairs to rush to the concessions if he'd strike out. I don't know if he knew how memorable that day was, but it was a very special one for me that I think about often. Some of my other memories of my grandpa revolve around food, from grandpa cooking with the phone on his designated night, grilling cedar plank salmon for family gatherings, or complaining to the waiter or an unsuspecting busboy about subpar service. The last thing I want to share is how my grandpa, now is 80, was with my almost 2-year-old son, Davi. When we were in the hospital before he was born, we were deciding between some names, and we wanted to make sure they were acceptable names, so we called my grandma and grandpa, and we were between Meyer and Davi. And my grandpa said, you can't name him Meyer, because that was the name of the guy who ran the candy store in his neighborhood in Brooklyn as a child. And then he never heard Davi before, but he said he would call his rabbi and figure out if it was a good name or not. And he did, and he called us back later that day and told us it's a good name, and he told us the background of it. And so that's the name we chose, but we gave our son Myers a middle name anyway. So now we think about him and the guy who runs the candy store, and we say it. Even though Zadie's health was deteriorating for much of Davi's life, Zadie really lit up when Davi was around. Davi didn't always give Zadie much in return, but Zadie would keep trying. Well, I will miss my grandpa dearly. I really wish Davi had a little more time with Zadie. Grandpa, Zadie, rest in peace. You will be missed.
Thank you all for coming today to listen to us talk about our grandpa. My grandpa was an amazing man. He was hardworking, and he always inspired me. He always wanted the best for his grandkids. He was always very supportive, and he made sure that we all had the opportunity to go to college if that's what we wanted. My grandpa was always giving me advice whenever I spoke to him. He was often a man of few words, so I always knew that those words meant a lot, and every word counted. Grandpa always wanted me to keep reaching further. I started off my career a little slow, and he was always asking me what I wanted to do next and what I was looking forward to. He gave me the motivation to keep pushing until I became an engineer, just like him. My grandpa always made time to take me out when I was a kid. Like my brother was saying, we went to lots of Sharks games and Giants games and the minor league Giants games. And he always took me. My fondest memories of going with him to the Tech Museum. It was a place that he volunteered at. He would follow me around as I was running all over the place, causing problems for all the employees there. Grandpa only knew my wife, Laura, for a short time. But every time that we went to visit him, he was always very sweet, and he was always making little jokes. We would always show him pictures of our life and our puppy, and he was always very, genuinely interested in what we had to say. I miss him a lot. I can't express how much I feel like there's a hole in my heart. Thank you, Grandpa. We miss you.
Hi, I'm Aiden. I'm the youngest grandchild, and my grandfather was a great man, and he really cared about his family and his grandchildren. And what I really want to talk about is something that I just always really admired about my grandfather, which was that he always stuck to his principles. And on the one hand, that meant that if there was a problem, then there was a strongly worded letter in the mail, and you could bet on that. But it was so much more than that. He he really cared about what was right and treating people with respect and how, treating people as they would treat you, as he would want them to treat you. And I just always remember at Passover, as we'd go through the Seder and everyone would have their part to read, it was clearly important to him that we all understood, the meaning of what we were reading and why we remembered it. And it wasn't just about, our past or our history. It was about, thinking about people who are still facing those things today. And so before the Seder, he would always start with a speech about, remembering that there are still people in slavery in the world and, still people facing such adversity. And, as we both celebrate and think about our past, we should, think about them as well. And, those principles were just clearly so important to him. And, I could tell that really passed on to his children as well, and my dad and my uncles. And so I just, want to say thank you, Papa, for always providing such a great example to look up to.
Thank you to all of you for sharing your stories. I was able, as I imagine many of us were, to really see Ron in many of those stories. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light. Long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining, though their time with us is done. But the star that lights up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. We rise for the El Malay. El Malay Rachamim, Shochen B'Meramim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utehorim, Ki Zohar Akiyam Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Yerachmiel Chaim Ben Yoel Ufredel, Shehalach Leolamo, Ba'al Harachamim Yasirehu, Beseder Kenafav Leolamim. Vitzro HaChaim en nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. May May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Yerach Me'el Chaim ben Yoel Ufredo, known lovingly to us as Ron, may his memory be for us a blessing. May we never let the light of his love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all his worthy and righteous deeds, that his memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May Ron's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share not be severed in sorrow. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. This concludes our service here. Please go immediately to your cars because the cemetery was expecting us at 1 o'clock. Again, there are directions out there, and we will meet together again at the cemetery.